All right, let's jump right in. We're not just talking about a guy who had a great idea. We're talking about someone who fundamentally rewired how we see reality itself. We're talking about Isaac Newton, the man who basically wrote the user manual for the universe.
And honestly, what better way to kick things off than with this quote from the poet Alexander Pope? And that's not just poetic flair, you know? Think about it. Before Newton, the universe felt, well, kind of random, a place of mystery. But after Newton, suddenly it was a grand, elegant machine that we could actually understand.
So you gotta wonder, where does a mind like that even come from? Well, it wasn't from some fancy academic family. No, it all started on a quiet farm in the English countryside, with a story that's really marked by loss and being alone. Yeah, to really get the man, you've got to go back to the beginning. Newton came into the world so fragile, nobody was sure he'd even make it. He was born after his father had already died, and then his mother remarried and left him with his grandmother. That sense of abandonment, it really shaped him, making him solitary and, let's be honest, pretty combative later in life. But you know, that isolation, it fueled a totally different kind of genius. He wasn't just a bookworm, he was a builder, a tinkerer. And this is what's so cool. His mind was always working things out, figuring out the mechanics of the world. These weren't just little toys, they were incredibly detailed models that showed he had this deep, intuitive understanding of physics way before he wrote down any laws. So how does this lonely kid from the countryside become, well, a giant of science? It all comes down to one single moment in time. In 1665, the Great Plague sweeps through England, and everything shuts down, including Cambridge University. A 22-year-old Newton has to pack up and go back to that same family farm. What happened next was, without a doubt, the greatest intellectual sprint in human history. Get this. In just 18 months of isolation, he basically cracks open 3 entirely different fields of science. He takes a prism, plays with light, and proves that white light isn't pure. It's actually the whole rainbow of colors mixed together. He invents an entire new field of math he called fluxions, which we now call calculus. And yep, the legend is true. He's sitting in his garden, sees an apple fall, and has this wild thought. What if the force pulling that apple is the exact same force holding the moon in the sky? But here's the crazy part. Newton discovers all this, and then he just sits on it for years. He was super secretive, completely terrified of being criticized. It actually took a visit from the astronomer Edmund Halley, yeah, the guy Halley's Comet is named after, to finally convince him to share these ideas with the world. And what came out of it? Well, only this, the Principia, a book that, for science, was as important as the Bible was for religion. It laid out in the cold, hard language of math the laws that govern everything that moves in the universe, from that tiny falling apple all the way to a wandering planet. I mean, just think about what this one book did. It gave us the 3 laws of motion that we all learn in high school. It defined gravity as a force that works everywhere in the universe. It explained why planets move in ovals, not perfect circles. It even solved the ancient mystery of why the tides happen. All of a sudden, the universe wasn't chaotic anymore. It was a predictable, perfectly running clock. Okay, but here's the thing. A mind that can see the hidden rules of the universe? Yeah, that guy wasn't exactly easy to get along with. Newton's life story is also a story of these intense, brilliant, and really, really bitter rivalries. And the biggest feud of all? Oh, it was the war over who invented calculus. Now, Newton definitely developed his version first, but in classic Newton fashion, he kept it totally secret. Then, this German mathematician, Gottfried Leibniz, he develops his own version independently, and he publishes it first. What followed was just a nasty academic war that split Europe's scientific community, with Newton using all of his power and influence to try and completely destroy Leibniz's reputation. This all leads us to maybe his most famous quote. It sounds so humble, right? Like he's giving credit to the scientists who came before him. But here's the amazing part. A lot of historians think this was actually a sarcastic dig at his rival Robert Hooke. Hooke was another brilliant scientist, but he also happened to be a very short man. Seems like Newton just couldn't resist the chance to throw a sharp elbow. So, okay, you've decoded the cosmos, you've battled the greatest minds in Europe. What do you think a guy like Newton does for a second act? Settle into a quiet life as a celebrated genius? Not a chance. I mean, really, put yourself in his shoes. You have figured out the fundamental rules of reality. Where do you even go from there? What could possibly be next? Well, the answer is one of the greatest plot twists in the history of science. He takes a government job,
But this wasn't some cushy retirement gig. The Royal Mint, where all the money was made, was in total crisis. Something like 10% of all the coins in England were fakes. And Newton decided he was the guy to fix it.
And he tackled it just like a science problem. He brought all his brainpower to forensics and detective work. He went undercover in shady bars and taverns gathering evidence himself. He personally interrogated criminals and built this rock-solid case against one of London's most notorious counterfeiters, a guy named William Challoner. And he didn't stop until Challoner was sent to the gallows. Turns out the man of abstract thought was also ruthlessly effective in the real world. So all this work at the Mint, combined with his, scientific god status, completely transformed him. He went from being this reclusive, difficult academic to one of the most powerful and respected men in all of England. The kind of honors he got, they were just unheard of for a scientist at the time. He was knighted by the Queen, becoming Sir Isaac Newton. He ran the Royal Society, the most important scientific organization in the world, for decades. And when he died, they gave him a state funeral. They buried him in Westminster Abbey, not in some quiet corner, but right there among the kings and queens of England. That was a huge cultural shift. It meant that science and reason were now seen as virtues of the nation itself. And man, what a reign it was. For more than 200 years, Newton's physics wasn't just a theory. It was considered the absolute truth about how the universe worked. It wasn't until Einstein came along that we realized the picture was a little more complicated. But Einstein didn't tear down Newton's building. He added a new, really mind-bending floor to it, one for things that are moving super fast or are incredibly massive.
Which kind of leaves us with this one last thought. Newton used that relentless, systematic brain of his to solve the biggest problems he could find, from how planets move to how to stop counterfeiters. If that same mind, with that same incredible focus, were around today, looking at mysteries like dark matter or quantum entanglement or even AI, what problem do you think he'd try to solve? Where would he even start?